Alright, so I wanted to do a video with some practical advice for quitting weed, because I've done a lot of videos about my own personal experience of quitting, but I wanted to do something that's a bit more kind of straightforwardly helpful, I guess. So this is 7 ways to make quitting weed easier. The first one is to quit tobacco first. And for those of you that do smoke tobacco with your weed, this is the most important one, I think. Weed is not physically addictive in the way that nicotine is. So if you combine the two, you're taking one substance that is potentially very psychologically addictive and can realistically offer quite a lot of, positive things and benefits in your life, and can be very fun and enjoyable, and you're mixing that with something that is one of the most physically addictive substances you can buy. And depending on how you mix the two, like, it can really create like a kind of nightmarishly addictive cocktail. And there's a perception that weed is not like, I don't know, it's kind of a different category to other drugs. Make no mistake, some people are totally and utterly addicted to weed, and it ruins their lives. And I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, by the way. I'm not like a purist. I'm not anti-weed or anything at all. But yeah, it can definitely ruin people's lives. In the same way, many people can drink healthily, and other people, it just totally destroys their lives. So yeah, a lot of people are addicted to weed, where it's to the point where it's no different to being addicted to hard drugs. Really, it's it's the same. And a large part of that, I think, is mixing it with tobacco. So I would suggest, if you're going to quit weed, don't try and do 2 extremely difficult things at first. I would suggest quitting tobacco first, personally. You could try quitting weed first and then quitting tobacco, but I think it's more important to quit tobacco, and I think that immediately takes away the physically addictive components. You've got that out of the way, and then you can deal just with the mental side of things. So, take from that what you will, approach it how you want, but I really think those 2 things need to be handled separately. Otherwise, you're just going to create a needless level of difficulty for yourself. 2 is meditation. I won't dwell on this one too long. A lot of people probably suggest it. It's not always the most popular suggestion, because it's kind of like, feels like a chore and whatever. It's definitely very, very helpful, really, just for anything. It's good for pretty much anything you do in your life. But definitely, for quitting weed, it has obvious benefits in terms of relaxation and reducing anxiety, helping you sleep, helping you focus and feel better. So yeah, I would say would be very important, or very useful at least. Similarly, exercise, number 3 on the list. Again, I won't go on about this one too long. It's in itself, it gives you kind of like a high, and definitely relaxes your mind and body, and it improves the quality of your sleep and helps you sleep more easily. It's just a great thing to do in general. It's also, I think it can feel quite kind of like cleansing after you've been drinking or doing drugs. I think exercise is really good. It's a good way to open up your lungs as well. And I just, again, in general, just a really good and important thing to be doing, certainly if you're trying to quit weed. Number 4, adjusting the way that you see yourself. I think this one gets overlooked a lot, and I think this is more of an issue with weed than with other drugs. It becomes part of your identity, and it becomes like, if you think about the amount of celebrities, musicians, people like that do prescription drugs, right, or that do chemical, forms of speed or benzos, or they're addicted to all these things. Most of them, they don't talk about it. They're not, it's not part of their identity. It's a secret. That's not the case with weed. It tends to form a fairly large part of your identity as a person. If you started at school, you were probably to some degree kind of alienated for it, but maybe in other ways it like made you feel cool, or it gave you a personality or an identity. and you became attached also to the idea of the kind of the fight for it to be legalized, and because clearly like it should be legalized, and the way people who smoke it are treated is wrong, and it's only natural to kind of attach yourself to that and for that to form part of your identity, and you can start to see yourself as kind of like a weed person, and it can be quite hard to let go of, but firstly, anything in that regard that you think you would theoretically lose, well, you can always have it back anyway. Nothing you do has to be permanent, but it's helpful to know that you actually have the capacity to choose whether or not you want to smoke, rather than to feel imprisoned by it. But also, you don't lose anything, in my opinion. I've never heard anybody say that. I've never heard anybody talk about, to anybody who's actually quit weed, talk about it in that regard in a bad way, or have any negative feelings towards it in that way. I've only really heard positive things from people who've quit weed. It's and scan through your own mind, like all the stories you've heard of people quitting weed. How many of them have been negative? How many of those people are different in a way that makes you not like them, or it's a non-issue. And it's something that is, it's like a kind of, I think, it ends up serving, whether this is what it really is, or just it ends up serving as a kind of control tactic by your brain to make you keep smoking. And it's nonsense, and you can still be exactly the same person, you can still enjoy the same things. It might take a while, I have to be honest, like it might take a while. It's taken me a few months to fully get back into music in the way that I was into it, probably because I had such heavy associations with weed and music. But any small number of things that changed in that regard, or that I felt I lost, they've all come back, and I don't feel my personality is like fundamentally any different at all. My attitude towards weed isn't different, it's just that my personal relationship with it is different, and I don't think it's the right time or a good idea for me to be smoking lots of weed at the moment, or any really. But that, I haven't lost anything, nothing. I'm exactly the same person otherwise. And the difference between stoned you and sober you is like really, I would say in almost all cases, it's a very small difference. It's just that difference can have quite big consequences in your life. So like, you in essence probably won't even change that much, but it's a change that has the capacity to create enormous positive change in your life if you're open to it. So don't worry about that if that is something that is on your mind. Number 5 is expenditure. Consider how much you spend on weed. It's probably a lot. It's very expensive. Consider how much you spend on tobacco as well. The same thing applies. Both very expensive habits. And if you're serious about quitting, then factor that in when you quit. If you say, for example, you spend, which is not abnormal, I'll do it in dollars, most people watching are probably American, say you spend $200 a month on weed, which I'd say is like not even that high. Like a lot of people will spend way more than that. $200 a month on weed, so that's $2,400 in a year. Imagine that over 5 years. That's like, it's like over 12 grand or something. 10 years, 25 grand. Like it seriously adds up. You add tobacco to that as well, and all the weed products and things, and the whole lifestyle, and for many people, the money you might lose missing out on opportunities or missing work, or I'm not trying to like talk in stereotypes here. I know a lot of people are very functional, but some people do, like the lifestyle can be costly in other ways. A lifestyle of being addicted to anything, I think, can cost you money in quite a lot of ways. Consider that when you quit, and consider how that extra money that you will be freeing up can help you to quit. You can put that into quitting. You can, I mean, I'm not saying all of it, that like that, all the thousands you would spend over a year or whatever. I don't think it would be sensible to like blow that on a 2-week period where you're trying to get weed out of your system. But you can do things to make the process easier for yourself. I'm hesitant in a way about this advice because I would hate to think, I'd hate to suggest kind of over-committing and, spending loads of money on really nice food for yourself or something, and then you start smoking again, and then you've wasted hundreds of pounds or dollars or whatever. But really, I think in most cases, it's a good idea to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to be uncomfortable for a week or so, maybe more, maybe less. For that time, I can, treat myself to things that will make this process easier, things that will motivate me or encourage me. You can give yourself rewards, to when you pass certain milestones, say once I get to day 3, I can buy this. Once I get to, buying new games on whatever you play games on or movies or food or anything. I just think those things can be a very helpful way to motivate yourself, and not to push it so far the other way that it's unhealthy, but to, as I said, to motivate and encourage yourself. 6, focus on the positives of being sober rather than the negatives of not being high. So it's easy to think about all the things that will be. It's easy to think of weed as plus and sober as, well, not minus, but just 0, like sober is just base level, weed is additional, but it's not really like that. They're just 2 different states. So sober, whilst we call it sober and we distinguish between that and all types of highs, it's not really, it's just another type of high. It's just another state that your brain can be in. It's one of many. The fact that you don't have to consume anything to get there is kind of irrelevant. It is in itself, it's, there's weed, there's alcohol, there's LSD, there's sobriety. They're all just different sort of states of consciousness. So once you see it like that, you can then say, okay, what do I like about this? What's cool about being sober? What do I like about this kind of well, not to call it a higher, sort of but well, in a sense, yeah. I mean, people refer to being high on life and things like that. I mean, what you can, it's helpful, I think, to try and look at that for the positive thing that it is, rather than looking at what you might miss about weed or what you can't do when you're sober or what you don't feel like doing when you're sober. Think about all the positives. You probably will find it much easier to exercise, most likely, again, more motivated. I know it's not the case for everybody. Your memory will almost definitely improve. I mean, that is, pretty much a complete fact across the board. Mine now at this point, I'm certain it's way, way better than it was like 3 or 4 months ago, whenever it was that I quit. I'm fairly convinced that my memory is significantly better now than it was, which is a really nice feeling. Like, I'm learning Spanish and I'm surprised at how well I'm remembering things. I'm consistently surprised by it, and it's a really cool feeling. And yeah, exercise is way easier. Like, I can just exercise whenever I want. I could go for a run right now. Like, I exercise every day. It's easy. I feel much more ready for things like that, much sharper. So that's really good. Yeah, so focus on those things. Keep busy if that suits you. Maybe you prefer to relax while you're quitting, but yeah, you will definitely have the capacity to be busy or to be stimulated or engaged in ways that you weren't prior to quitting. So remember that. 7 is to put the experience into perspective. You've probably experienced much harder things in your life than quitting weed. There are much harder things that you can experience in life than quitting weed. It's usually a much bigger thing in your mind than it really is in reality. I thought for a long time it would be very difficult. I was really averse to doing it. There was just something in me, which I guess is just addiction. I really didn't want to. I really, it just didn't feel like the right thing to do. My kind of gut feeling was that it was bad and I didn't want to do it. And the process was nothing like that. It was totally easy and normal. And I'm not saying it will be easy for everybody, because I think it's much harder for some people than it was for me. But it's still, in the grand scheme of things, even relative to coming off other drugs, ones that have really vicious withdrawals, and I know weed does have really bad withdrawals for some people who are heavy smokers, but, you know, generally speaking, relative to withdrawing from benzos or opiates or anything else, it's even in that sense, it's quite, or I should say, you know, specifically in that sense, it's quite easy by comparison for most people, most of the time. And in terms of life in general, I mean, if you consider, you know, if you're thinking about quitting weed, there's probably a reason for that, or many reasons for that. It's probably consequences you're afraid of if you continue smoking. Consider those consequences and try to really make them three-dimensional in your mind. You know, if you're worried, like, you know, my relationship's slipping away, or I'm not following my professional ambitions, or you know, I'm losing my ability to socialize, or I can't remember anything, or I'm failing my studies, think those things through to their logical conclusion and try to imagine how bad those things could be in comparison to a week where you kind of don't feel very nice, or maybe more, maybe, like I said, maybe months, but, you know, just of feeling a bit funny and having to adjust and change your lifestyle. And you know, also, as well as that, just consider also all the positive things you get out of it, and think about, if it goes well, all the rewards, the brilliant rewards and new new possibilities in your life you could gain by doing this. And it's in the end, it's a small sacrifice, and once you start, I'm pretty confident that for most of you, like, it won't feel anywhere near as difficult as you think it will. It just I've heard very, very few stories of it being really, really difficult. The only thing is sleep, but as I've already gone over some of them in, you know, this video, there are ways to mitigate that. I probably should have made this video 8 parts and included one about sleep, but yeah, there are many ways to improve your sleep. And yeah, I wish I had done, actually, but I've already started the video now. But yeah, you can check out my book. Actually, I've got a whole section on sleep in there. It's available free. If you can't afford it or you don't have access to it, you can message me on Instagram, BigDome22, BIGDOME22, or just, like, I don't know, comment here or whatever. And there's a lot of stuff in there about how to naturally improve your sleep without needing to take dependence forming medications, and there's tons of stuff online, so yeah, check that out. That's kind of my unofficial 8th suggestion for making the process easier. But anyway, yeah, I hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. Please consider, you know, liking, subscribing, commenting, and definitely share this video if you know anyone who will find it useful or it will help them quit. Please share it. I'm trying to do something positive with this channel and put useful things out there, and the more people that see it, the better, and the more content I can make and stuff. So yeah, good luck and take care.